Profiles in Cinemania, George Carlin.
Warning, the profile you are about to hear contains 7 words that must never be said on television or radio. Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. I've just been handed an update. 3 more words have been added to this list. Fart, turd, and twat. According to the Federal Communications Commission, none of these words can be broadcast over the airwaves without incurring massive fines. Once again, these 10 words, shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, tits, fart, turd, and twat, must never be said over the airwaves under any circumstances.
Newsflash, motherfuckers! This is the internet, and we can do what we like, which is exactly the way George Carlin would have wanted it. Dubbed the Dean of Counterculture Comedians, George Dennis Patrick Carlin, youngest son of Mary and Patrick Carlin, was born in Manhattan in 1937. With a name like that, you guessed it, he was about as Irish as they come without actually being from Ireland. Carlin routinely described himself as fully Irish, but we here at the Cinemania Society will leave the definition of fully up to the listener. Despite both being devout Catholics, Carlin's parents split when he was about 2 months old. When little Georgie reached school age, his mother put him in a parish school run by Catholic nuns. You remember all those jokes about sadistic Catholic school nuns and their steel rulers? That shit wasn't a joke, not to George. Carlin's parish school was located in a neighborhood of Manhattan, a neighborhood which George routinely called White Harlem because it bordered actual Harlem and sounded tougher than its real name, Morningside Heights. It was in Catholic school that Carlin started questioning the existence of a big invisible man in the sky, which in turn led him to be a devout atheist. I'm gonna guess the nuns and their rulers played a role in that, but I digress. As a schoolboy, Carlin got quite a reputation for being the class clown, which meant that he routinely won his summer camp's drama award, and also got him expelled from high school at age 15. Fuck them if they can't take a joke. After high school, Carlin did a 2-year stint in the Air Force as a radar tech. It was during this time he discovered a path that would eventually lead him to his true calling. He became a disc jockey at the radio station near his base in Shreveport. Past being prologue. Even in the military, George remained a clown with a healthy contempt for authority. Naturally, this went over like a turd in a punch bowl. After 3 courts martial, as well as an unspecified number of reprimands and disciplinary measures, he was declared an unproductive airman and was chucked out on a general discharge. Fuck them if they, well, you get the idea. In 1959, at the height of the beatnik era, Carlin met fellow disc jockey Jack Burns, and together they created a radio comedy duo act called The Wright Brothers. In 1960, this became the morning show at KDAY in Hollywood, which means that yes, one of the greatest comedians of the 20th century got his start as a morning drive time DJ. God help us all. Being a DJ in the mornings meant that Carlin could spend his nights farting around, going to coffee houses, working on his solo act. You know, all those first steps towards official stand-up comedy. This meant Carlin got exposed to some of the most influential comedians of the era, most notably Lenny Bruce, legendary outlaw comedian. Bruce was notorious for the blue material that got him repeatedly arrested on obscenity charges. More importantly, the court battles those arrests sparked are responsible for paving the way to the freedom of speech we take for granted today. You know, that freedom of speech which is thoroughly exploited by porn magazines and cable TV shows like South Park and Game of Thrones, the one that the Proud Boys I'm gonna stop now. Anyhow, when Lenny Bruce was arrested on obscenity charges at the Gate of Horn Club in Chicago in 1962, the police detained Carlin along with several other audience members for questioning. He was ordered to produce ID, and Carlin, being Carlin, told the pigs where they could stick it. Pigs also being pigs, they tossed George and Lenny into the paddy wagon together. There's an of mice of men joke somewhere in there, but you can put that together yourself. Carlin must certainly have recognized a kindred spirit because he later said the event radicalized him. Carlin quit the morning DJ gig, began appearing on television variety shows throughout the 60s, and he had a fair amount of success. There were appearances on The Tonight Show, The Merv Griffin Show, A Little Theater, a bit part in a harmless comedy. But if you were one of those long-haired types who frequented the clubs, you wouldn't have recognized any of it. But all was not right with George. If you go back and watch these old reruns, especially his appearances on Ed Sullivan and the Smothers Brothers, the shadow of whatever passed between George and Lenny in that paddy wagon is clearly visible. The motto of the 60s counterculture may have been, "Don't trust anyone over the age of 30." But Carlin, newly 30 himself in the summer of love, felt like a twat. He even called himself a traitor when recalling that period in his biography. George had been playing it safe. He had been playing it nice. And as the decade wound down, he realized he was playing to the parents of the people he actually wanted to talk to. So he changed his appearance to signify he was done with the people-pleasing shit. He grew out his hair, grew out his beard, and stopped wearing suits and ties. He stopped playing nightclubs and started playing colleges. He wrote a new act, one which was outspoken and critical of the establishment, one which pissed in the eye of power in a way he deemed worthy of his hero Lenny Bruce, who had been found dead in 1966. Thus was Carlin's infamous 7 dirty words routine born. Beyond merely saying the words shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits,
and fuck, turd, and fuck,
all of which could be safely and legally printed in newspapers, by the way, Carlin's routine was designed to inspire contempt over obscenity laws, particularly the way the authorities used them as an excuse to oppress people protesting racial injustice and the war in Vietnam. Though Lenny Bruce may have started the fire, George Carlin kept it burning. ACAB, motherfuckers. And ACAB motherfuckering Carlin went. In 1972, he got arrested in Milwaukee, but this time it wasn't for some piddly shit like failing to produce ID. No, he got busted for violating obscenity laws. Same as Lenny Bruce. Class clown no longer felt like class cunt. Throughout his career, Carlin was arrested a grand total of 7 different times for performing the bit, but the cases were often dismissed because by then, the man had been forced to acknowledge that dirty words don't cause riots all on their own. One case related to a broadcast of his 7 deadly words routine eventually made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and in 1978, the bit was judged indecent but not obscene. In so doing, the court upheld the FCC's ability to regulate indecent content on the air, which led to the FCC to start issuing what they referred to as the Carlin warning. Talent were told that they were no longer allowed to say shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits.
Don't forget fart, turd.
Yeah, and twat. Yeah, couldn't say those words during a live performance, and fines would be inflicted for each occurrence. But this itself was a win, because it was the government acknowledging that the law was bullshit. If you were rich enough, or if the show's take was big enough, you could swear all you fucking wanted. Controversy is the handmaiden of fame, and 7 dirty words made George Carlin a household name. This won him a Grammy in 1973. Mindful of the hand-up he'd gotten from his own hero, Carlin used his new status to help other struggling comedians get noticed, namely Richard Pryor, whom he personally considered an influence. By the mid-70s, Carlin had become the guru for counterculture comedians. He had unknowingly drawn a map that would guide other comedians to stardom. In 1975, he hosted the very first episode of Saturday Night Live, and every member of the original SNL cast, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Gilda Radner, every last one of those cocksuckers have gone on record citing George Carlin as a hero. 5 years later, in 1980, he earned a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And guess where they put it? Right in front of his old radio station, K-Day. The list of comedians who Carlin has influenced goes beyond the SNL cast. You can draw a direct line from George Carlin to every counterculture comic performing today. Dave Attell, Bill Burr, Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld, Louis Black, Stephen Wright, Dennis Leary, Joan Rivers, Mitch Hedberg, Jay Leno, Margaret Cho, and especially political satirists like Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert. Even filmmakers like Kevin Smith drew inspiration from Carlin's work, making the man truly a dread source of Cinemania indeed. Though Carlin has admitted that he is not a gifted actor, which is funny because he originally wanted to be the next Danny Kaye. He has quite a few film acting credits. Usually this took the form of small parts that endeared him to new generations. like the role of the time-traveling mentor Rufus in the 1989 film Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and the 1991 sequel, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Whoa. During the 90s, he befriended writer-director Kevin Smith, who cast him in some of his best roles, most notably as Cardinal Glick in the 1999 movie Dogma. Carlin was delighted to take some pot shots at the Catholic Church. Far more extensive than his cinematic work was Carlin's television work. Sure, we've already covered his variety show appearances, which were extensive, but in the mid-90s, Carlin had a short-lived sitcom called The George Carlin Show. He said he had a blast making it, but was relieved when it went tits up after its first and only season because he felt that it was taking him away from his real work, stand-up comedy. Perhaps unsurprisingly, George was always quick to point out that comedy is a form of rhetoric. He felt that it was his job as a comedian to be the court jester, the one who points out how the king is fucking things up, but kept the king laughing long enough so that the jester wouldn't get his head cut off. In 2008, George Carlin passed away at the age of 71, a few weeks after his last stand-up special, and just 4 days after being awarded the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. His death was mourned by nearly every stand-up comedian working at the time. In 2014, Morningside Heights renamed a portion of West 121st Street George Carlin Way. Few comedians worked as hard as George Carlin. He was renowned for constantly writing and refining his bits, for being someone who never ever quit. More importantly, he never quit trying to open people's eyes to the truth. And despite the best attempts of just about every person ever in authority over him, he never stopped being anything other than himself. When asked what he wanted his epitaph to be, George said, "He was here just a minute ago." This has been another profile in Cinemania. This episode was written by Zacharia Burks, Ethan Ireland, and Andy Slack. Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. And music by Meteor at meteormusic.bandcamp.com. Profiles in Cinemania is a product of the Cinemania Society, LLC.